Hello again, all you sexy people of the internet. It is me, Dungeon Master Jake, also known as the Chaos Gamer. Sorry that, well, again, it hasn't been too long, but I did say I was going to be making videos every day, and I'm a few days behind. I do apologize. I'm going to catch up and release more videos in the coming days, but just to try and get back on track. But yeah, no, the holidays are hectic as, well, heck. Um, so, this video, I am going to talk about the various races and how they kind of fit into Erudain. Um, it's going to be a kind of a brief overview. I'm not going to get into a ton of details. Um, but yeah, I'll probably do more detailed videos on the races another point, but I figured this was a great point to kick off and kind of learn how just all the various groups fit together. So let's start off with the most common group, the humans. As the race, they are the most populated one on Erudain, uh, and they definitely have the most land controlled by them. Um, as well, we see here we have Drontai, which is called the human continent because, yeah, it is almost entirely populated by humans. Um, Very little of other races. They are there, they're just not as common. But yeah, you will find humans on every continent, and in my world, humans are kind of like the base race. They are really ingenuitive. They are constantly, just as a race, exploring, expanding. Uh, they don't know when to stop. They're constantly trying new things, even if it might not sound smart or be a bit dangerous. Because, they don't, humans are the average race. They don't have anything special. They're not particularly good at magic naturally. They're not long-lived. They're not super hardy like other races. So they do a lot of stuff. Um, because of this, actually, humans are very neutral to magic, uh, which leads to them being very susceptible to external forms of magic, which is why um, players haven't encountered this, because this isn't exactly a common thing, but there are human subgroups, maybe subspecies of humans, very rare, where like their ancestors long ago got affected by magic in such a way, and the magic, the spell, whatever, has just been passed down along the family, just creating a group of humans that do have certain magic abilities. Again, not common, but they are out there. Next group I'm going to talk about are the elves. They are probably one of the most recognizable fantasy races. They're not going to be too common, because elves are basically divided into two groups. Those from the Elven Forest and those not from the Elven Forest. Um, and that is because long, long ago, uh, the elves were a prosperous race under a god being of sorts. I'm not going to go too in depth with this, but they were united under one cause, especially one specific tribe of elves uh, who ruled with their kind of god king. Uh, Something happened, the god king, it's questionable what happened, but he is not there anymore. And since that time, all the various tribes of elves, and there are a lot, are arguing about which one was the chosen tribe by that god king, who was the ruling tribe. They all claim it was their own, and that just no, and so almost all the tribes are constantly in just a weird state of bickering and fighting, and that's how the Elven Forest is basically like. Um, and but there are many tribes who kind of just gave up that fight. They don't really care. They don't want to be associated with the God King, and so they have become, well, the Drow who many believe were kicked out during the reign of the God King and cursed. But races like snow elves, sand elves, the Waldenwood elves, mountain elves, jungle elves, various tribes that have kind of just scattered throughout the world, sea elves even, because yeah, they don't want to be part of the politics of the great elven forest. And honestly, the elves aren't even really part of the elven forest itself, as they know at the heart of the forest is the world tree, but they also know that something happened and they have been rejected by the world tree, and constantly are looking for a way to make it up, to prove that no, they are the worthy race, the superior race. Uh, that's a bit about the lore of the elves, but the elves as a race are very haughty. They do view themselves as better than every other race. They are the chosen of the world tree, of the god king, yada yada. But in reality, not so much. Next up is the races, is probably the other most famous race, the dwarves. Dwarves, of course, live largely underground. Not completely, they do. They're not, um, I don't know the right term, but yeah, they don't live solely underground. They do like sunlight. They like plants as much as any other race. They have to grow crops and stuff. They're not just going to be surviving off of mushrooms and funguses. But they do largely live underground because the dwarves just have a connection with the earth and the ground and the elements like that, as well as with metals and other such. They are, again, the greatest, well, metal workers, miners, crafters, and so on. Um, the unique quality about the dwarves in my world is the dwarves are a very active race. They are kind of similar to humans in that they are constantly building things, digging deeper, trying to craft something new, and whatnot. And so long ago, the dwarves implemented a rule that they can only do this stuff, craft new things, expand, build up their armies, dig deeper, when they have a king. And the king will serve for life as like an elected position. Uh, it's like they're elected once, and then they're the king for their lifespan, and then there would be no king until a new one would be elected for their lifespan. Um, so it's kind of a kingship, but there's no passing on of inheritance to princes, though there could be if the prince was good and got elected as well. So currently in my world, there is no dwarf king, so the dwarves don't do a lot, and this is very evident. The players didn't realize because they didn't interact with the dwarves, but any official dwarven letter will start with either the phrase, the dwarves have no king, yada yada something, therefore this letter or this order is not enforced by any will. Um, or if there is a dwarf king, the letter will start, there is a king, yada 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 stuff. Therefore, this letter is a proclamation and is enforced and endowed by said dwarf king. A lot of technical jargon with that. Um, so that is the dwarves. You know the gist of dwarves. I just want to explain how they fit into my world, and that's kind of how I'm doing all the races. Next up, I will go with the race, the Halflings. Halflings are a fun race. They are similar to the elves native to the Great Forest continent, and the dwarves are technically native to the Gourmet, the Wasteland continent. Um, but yes, halflings are native to the Great Forest continent, but halflings are interesting as they don't set up large kingdoms. Halflings in my world are largely a nomadic kind of people. Now, they don't travel in groups, it's more just like halflings don't like to settle down. They like to constantly be on a journey. They make very great natural bards of various kinds, as they will learn a trick or a trade and use that to just kind of travel and see the world until they feel like they're ready to settle down. Maybe they've met another and want to start a family, or they find an area that just resonates with them. Um, but many halflings, yeah, they pick up a trade. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's dancing, singing, storytelling. Could even be like fighting or as working as a mercenary. And halflings go off and just they explore the world. Now there are halfling towns, there are cities, there are halflings everywhere, but you'll find a lot of halflings just on the road. They are the travelers, the natural bards of this world. Okay, let's go on to the next race. And let's keep it with the short people for a third time in a row with the gnomes. The gnomes are an interesting race. They are inventive, curious, constantly loving to tinker and understand the world. Um, and, they're very much like dwarves in that they love crafting, though less from a magical standpoint, more from, or even just an artistic standpoint. They love the mechanicalness, the intrinsicness. Uh, Gnomes make great natural artificers of various kinds, or the ones that are left, as a big part of my world is that much like the dwarves in Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls in general, the gnomes largely disappeared about 500-ish years ago. Now, it wasn't something, it's more like there was a gnomish kingdom, and suddenly it vanished. There's no buildings anymore, there's not even a crater, there's just nothing where the gnomish kingdom was. Now, there's still gnomes throughout the world. It's not like every single one just vanished, but when their kingdom of origin disappeared, that so did many of the gnomes. So gnomes are viewed as a bit of an odd race at this point, kind of outcasts. They're not quite sure where they fit in, if they're going to prosper and rebuild, or if they're just going to disappear forever. So that is the race known as gnomes. Uh, Next up, the race I will talk about is Dragonborn. Dragonborn are native to the Dronte continent, also known as the Wasteland. Or no, not the Dronte, sorry, Gorver continent, also known as the Wasteland continent. Dragonborns believe themselves, they are very prideful, believing themselves to be very distantly, but uh, related to dragons. And because dragons are the ultimate life form, Dragonborn often see themselves as great beings as well. So Dragonborn, they live very harsh lifestyles on Gorver. Let me pull up the map. I hope it loads actually this time. But yeah, they live very harsh lifestyles. Many are nomadic, as there's only one city, Dragon Ridge, where for the most part, that's a city ruled, it's the ancestral home of dragons, so it's a city of dragons, but Dragonborn live there as well. And that brings on to another important thing about Dragonborn is they're kind of racist. They divide themselves constantly based on well, scale color and how pure their scale color is. If you're a pure gold dragonborn, you are treated like royalty. Silver are treated well, copper. But if you're a chromatic color, you're not going to be treated as well. And if you're one who has had a lot of inbreeding in the or not inbreeding, but mixed breeding in the family, becoming more of a mutt, your scales turned into more of a rusty-ish color, orangish red, then you're not treated very well. And so only pure colors and the privileged elite are allowed to live in Dragon Ridge, whereas many other tribes just wander around as semi-nomadic tribes, often returning to the same spots. Let me see. What other races do I have? Okay, orcs slash half orcs and tieflings. I'm not gonna say half. Oh, actually, I do have half elves, but actually, let's see. This video is getting long enough, so I'm going to cover orcs for now because we are on looking at a map of Gorvair, and orcs largely live in Gorvair. And any other races I will do in part two. On the orcs are similarly another nomadic tribe. They live honestly throughout the Gorvair continent, uh, settling into many different tribes. Um, the orcs are, well, they're viewed from the outside as uncivilized, barbaric people. And, well, to a degree, they're right. People are right. But honestly, no. Orcs have a very interesting culture. They believe in a lot more of attunement with nature. They don't care to develop very far. Their magic is more natural and works with the world through shamanism. The orcs are kind of violent. They do enjoy settling things physically, but they don't just want bloodshed. They don't aim to kill. Their way of things is to resolve things by fighting. Strength matters to the orcs. So they fight to prove that they are strong, that they are worthy under their many gods and spirits and ancestors. Yeah, the orcs fight. Um, Orcs particularly don't get along with some of the more dainty races like elves, who honestly, well, elves just in general look down on orcs, but orcs, they are brutally honest. They are straightforward and violent. Elves can often sly away. They try to pretend to be refined and dignified and all that stuff, where orcs accept their base primal urges and other such things. So there is many tribes of orcs, and they all have their own ways of life and other subgroups. Um, I feel like some of these ideas are not as organized, but I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will be doing more videos in the future. I will be uploading a few to try and catch up, and you will definitely see part two of the races in the near future. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out more from my World of Erudain series if you'd like, or check out the Erudain campaign. This is Dungeon Master Jake signing off. Have a great day out there. Bye bye.